What's going on, guys? So in this video we're going to cover something a little bit different. So I've been asked on many occasions what's some of the older, more vintage style bottles that I have in my collection, and I have stuff ranging anywhere from, a few years old to all the way to 28 years old at this point. Most of it is not spoiled. In certain instances there's maybe a spoiled top note, but we'll cover all that as we go through these. I have 15 bottles, some multiples from one individual house, for example, and I just thought it'd be an interesting video topic to finally cover. There's nothing extravagant, wow, crazy expensive here. There's a few that have a little bit of value, but these are the 15 oldest bottles in my collection. Stay tuned. And I figured we would start with the oldest. This is the one that's 28 years old. This is a 1994 bottle of Tiffany For Men. Very, 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 very super, super, super rare that I wear this. 28 years old, okay? Think about that. Some of you are thinking, oh, that must smell terrible. It must be spoiled. No, it's gorgeous. It's a sandalwood carnation dominant fragrance, and I hate to even waste spray because partials of this 50 ml, like missing a quarter to a third of the bottle, go for $200+ these days. These are harder to find. They stopped making this fragrance in the very early 2000s, if I remember correctly. But it smells so good. Super masculine, floral, woody fragrance. There's a little bit of orris, if I remember correctly, in here. It gives a little bit of a floral, powdery tone, but it's an older style with that carnation, and it's very woody dominant. Sandalwood is the main wood that I get with this one. Very elegant, classy, masculine stuff. For being dominated by florals, it's definitely a masculine floral fragrance. It's more of an oriental woody type of fragrance at its core. That's really how I would classify it. There's a little bit of citrus. It's not spoiled at the top, believe it or not. This is back before we had our high-end luxury niche fragrances as we dub them today. This is a higher level designer fragrance at one point, and I mean, it even says cologne. It's not like it was some heavy EDP concentration or parfum concentration. This is a beast. This stuff is 12+ hours. It's not too loud, but it's one that I don't need more than 4 or 5 sprays. The very few times I've ever worn this fragrance. Very, very special occasion fragrance for me. Last time I wore it was when we were filming the interviews for the Zed Creators launch back in Chicago at the recording of this about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than a year ago actually, but elegant stuff, very special fragrance in my collection. That's Tiffany For Men. Now we go to one that's more sentimental reason for why I still have a little bit of juice in the bottle and why I still have this bottle in general. This is an older bottle of Adidas Moves. They don't even look like this anymore. They don't have this 3 stripes cap anymore. It's the same shape, but it doesn't have the indentions for the 3 stripes. The bottle's changed. The juice color is a darker blue now, which I do have some of the newer bottles, but what's special about this is this was a lesser fortunate time when I used to wear this on a regular basis. I used to wear this all the time before I met my wife, and this is the scent she ties to me the most because I used to wear this all the time when we first started dating. This bottle is about 14 years or so old, and I've been with my wife for 12 years now since we started dating. It'll be our 12-year anniversary, wedding anniversary, this November at the recording of this video, so I haven't sprayed this in so long. Doesn't smell spoiled to me. I mean, it's been a long time since I've sprayed this one. I just wear some of the newer ones on the rare occasions that I get in the mood for Adidas Moves. It's not exactly... Ooh, that actually smells pretty good. It smells better than the newer formulas. So this is one of those things that changed over time. Not some super special fragrance by any means. Don't get me wrong. This was a $10 fragrance back then. It's still a $10 fragrance now, pretty much. But it's one that has a strong nostalgic tie for myself and my wife personally, because she loves the way this stuff smells on me. And now that I haven't sprayed this bottle in forever, it still smells really freaking good. It's the olfactive memory comes back immediately with it. But yeah, this is one of the older bottles in my collection. I'll always have this long after it spoils, whatever. I'll never get rid of it for sentimental reasons. But Adidas Moves. So the next four are basically the same house. This one is the main house. The other three come from a subsidiary house, as strange as that sounds. But Christian Audigier. I bought this for nostalgic reasons. I don't even wear it. That's why it's a full bottle. I think I've sprayed this on my body twice since I reacquired it. I used to have a bottle when it was in mass production Ed Hardy, Christian Audigier's heyday, when this was a thing. It was a popular designer thing. This is a rum boozy kind of darker fragrance, has some fruitiness to it, like a blackberry note if I remember correctly. Super synthetic, but for its time, this was a really good fragrance. My wife still has like a little less than half of the women's one from forever ago, over a decade ago. And I went through my bottle. I had a gift set and went through the little 1/4 ounce travel atomizer and everything long ago. And that reminds me of early in our relationship. We were wearing stuff like this all the time. The Ed Hardy craze, the Ed Hardy fragrances and Christian Audigier and everything was a thing for us around that time. And I just reacquired it kind of to have it. I don't really wear it much. This is one of the very, very old bottles. I don't know the exact year, but this bottle in particular is a little over a decade old. It's not one of the newer ones. I mean, the crown is faded. It's not even the same color gold as this, because when it was new, the crown cap was this color gold. You can see it's a darker hue than the actual cap. The cap's almost silver. It's faded so much. So just a nostalgic fragrance that I kind of have just to have, if you will. This is where kind of the little bit of the collector mentality for sentimental reasons and nostalgic purposes comes into play. So nothing special here, not anything I would recommend anybody run out to get. By today's standards, this is a subpar fragrance, really, but it's a decent fragrance that I like to have in my collection, like I said, for nostalgic reasons. This is Christian Audigier for Men. Now, the other three are Ed Hardy fragrances. Like I said, it's a subsidiary brand because it's Ed Hardy by Christian Audigier. It's technically what it is. So this is my original bottle of Love and Luck. You've seen this bottle on the channel before. There was a time when it was my signature scent. I've used a little over half the bottle. I do have a sealed 1 ounce bottle as well. I went through my 1/4 ounce. This was a gift set from my brother and sister-in-law for Christmas one year, and during the same time frame of me wearing Christian Audigier. I've always liked this. Now the top note's a little spoiled. The citruses have spoiled just a little bit, but once you give it a few minutes, it settles into the heart, and it's that crisp, fresh spiciness, kind of a little bit of citrus feel there, some more woods kind of come in. It still smells really good. It's just not as good as it once was. Like I said, the citruses have kind of started to sour just a little bit. So it's another one. I mean, I used to wear this all the time. I've gotten a ton of compliments wearing this fragrance. Ton of compliments wearing it. And this stuff was a beast. This not really a beast, but it was strong. This stuff would project really heavy. I've had this grab people when I walk by in the past. This stuff, it's not the same fragrance that it was. They've redistributed. You can still get these cheap, and it's still a good fragrance, just the performance is on the weaker side these days. It's kind of a watered-down version of the original, if you would. But that is the first one, is Love and Luck. We'll just go through these together. I have a backup 50 ml of Hearts and Daggers. I love Hearts and Daggers. This is kind of the majority of the Ed Hardy tattoo designs on this cap. And I have another 50 ml just like this. This is my original bottle. This has spoiled as well. The citrus is up top, but that tequila note that it has kind of brings some life back into it. It's, again, only after 2 or 3 minutes maybe that kind of sour citrus kind of goes away. And it's really not that bad. It's not as bad with Hearts and Daggers as it is with Love and Luck. Love and Luck definitely smells a bit more spoiled and soured in the top note, but like I said, it fades pretty quickly. This is a good one. This is juicy, but more so fresh, spicy, and a little boozy. Always really like this one. This is a really good fragrance. Like I said, I've gone through most of it, and I do have an additional sealed 50 ml for if and when I ever do finally finish this bottle off. I have one of the old original distribution, this version of the fragrance ready to go. Just goes to show how long it takes me to go through these bottles. But I mean, I haven't been wearing this in a long time. There was a time when I used to wear the hell out of this fragrance. And then the one that for as long as I've had, I've worn the least. The cap, this is the original Ed Hardy For Men with the tiger on the front. And I've barely worn it. I mean, there's a little dent in here, you know. And when I was putting these together, I sprayed it on my arm, and I forgot how good it is. It's a sweet ambery scent. It's actually quite lovely. Not spoiled at all. This bottle came from Dillard's specifically. I bought this one, just the bottle, from Dillard's. I remember the day I bought it, actually. And I really like it, especially at the time, and that's where the dent came from. I would kind of wear this one to dinner. This was kind of my evening wear, Ed Hardy, during the time when I was wearing all these Ed Hardy fragrances, which that's what we're discussing right now. But kind of just fell to the background. This is one of those original distribution bottles from way, way back. This was back when they were New Wave fragrances. I believe there's a different distributor now. That's back when it was New Wave. Yeah, New Wave Fragrances Incorporated. That's on the bottom of the others as well. You can see New Wave Fragrances right there. That's the original distribution. And this one, solid performer. Not a beast, but solid performer. This one definitely projects pretty heavy, really gets out in the air. And this one will pull a compliment. It's like I said, it's a sweet ambery scent, kind of in the same vein as Dolce & Gabbana The One, but this is a little bit sweeter than Dolce & Gabbana The One. But one that sadly I haven't spent a ton of time with for as long as I've had this bottle, Ed Hardy. So speaking of gift sets that I got for Christmas from my brother and sister-in-law, the following year after they had bought the Love and Luck set for me, they actually bought me Kenneth Cole Mankind, and you see how much is missing from that bottle. I was never really a big fan of it. It's okay. It's kind of in the same vein of kind of Mont Blanc Legend and Abercrombie and Fitch Fierce. That it's got a little bit of that zesty fruitiness and a little green. It's okay. It's not a bad scent. It just never was like, ooh, I can't wait to wear this. I would just gravitate towards my other fragrances. I mean, I have worn it. There's a little bit of juice missing from it. And this bottle is like 2011, I want to say. 2010, 2011, something like that. It's around 11 or 12 years old, this bottle. Doesn't smell spoiled at all. I'm going to spray it again, as a matter of fact. It's okay. It's a little clean, musky, kind of leathery feel, if you will. A little kind of suede, leathery type of smell. I don't remember the notes exactly. I believe there's a little bit of pineapple in here for that fruit, that juicy fruit smell that it's got up top. It's a decent fragrance. I know it's spawned a ton of flankers, and some of the flankers are very beloved, but the original, like I said, it's always just kind of been okay for me. That's why for as long as I've had this, the decade plus I've had this bottle, I don't really wear it. Especially once my collection grew, because at this point I had probably 20 or so fragrances. 10, 11, 12 years ago, I would regularly have about 20 bottles in my collection. So if I wasn't a big fan of it, I wouldn't reach for it much. Kind of the same case these days. But this is definitely one of the older bottles in my collection that's actually still good. Kenneth Cole Mankind. So this is a bottle from right about 2000. So this bottle is about 22 years old, roughly. 21, 22 years old. It is a vintage formula of Nautica. The original, back when it was a green bottle, old style font. The newer ones, it's green juice in a clear bottle with the newer font called Nautica Classic. And they have the matching color plastic atomizers, where here it's just all chrome. So this one, the top note is a little bit spoiled. The citruses, just a little bit. But what's different about this, and I mean pretty big difference versus the newer style version that you can get for 10 to 15 bucks. This is much stronger. This is every bit of 6+ hours on my skin, even now. And it's much more floral and musky than it is salty and marine. That's the difference. You still get that salty marine quality here. It's still a nautical type of fragrance, hence the name and the brand. It represents a sail on a sailboat, the shape of the bottle. It does have that aquatic nautical feel to it, that airy, breezy feel, but it's much more white floral and clean musky than it is just dominant saltwater smell, which is kind of what the new version, Nautica Classic, is. Super happy to have this one. I have the aftershave splash that's a vintage like this that's not spoiled at all. I do use that on occasion. It was a gift set that I bought. And just nostalgic reasons, you know what I mean? The original is much better than the new version, for sure. There's no denying that. But, I mean, classic is still close enough to this. You're just not going to get the same level of performance or the same level of depth to the scent. This is a deeper scent, believe it or not. And you can find these for a decent price online if you ever wanted to grab it. I mean, the gift set I bought came from eBay. I want to say I paid like maybe 50 bucks. Maybe. It might have been cheaper than that even. And happy to have it in my collection. Once in a while I do spray it just to go back to it, but I more so use the aftershave. But yeah, about 21, 22 years old is the original Nautica. So this bottle, while not the oldest in my collection, for what it is, you would think it might be spoiled because it's a cheap aquatic fragrance. Citrus dominant, kind of a margarita on the rocks type of smell is what I've called it in the past. This is Tommy Bahama St. Barts. As you can see, just based on the front of the bottle, this is the old style. The cap's even just a little bit different. It's not exactly the same shape, and the rope's not exactly the same and all that. But the font's different. This is the old style Tommy Bahama font. I believe they actually say St. Barts on the front now, but this stuff still smells great. It performs pretty well, believe it or not. It's like 5 or 6 hours on my skin. It's very warming. It's really good. Oh, this stuff never gets old. This is summertime vacation in a bottle. I love this stuff. And yes, I have smelled the newer bottles. My uncle has one of the newer bottles. I've sprayed his. It's pretty much the same scent. I don't really think anything's changed. It doesn't smell like anything's changed to me. But this is one that I've had for minimum 8 years. I've had it now. And it's not spoiled at all. It doesn't sit in its box. Yeah, it sits on a shelf out of sunlight in a cool area. The temperature's regulated in here, obviously, but it's not necessarily every cheap fragrance is going to spoil quickly either. So when you have these higher quality luxury niche fragrances, some of them just kind of get better with age. So this 2 to 3 year shelf life thing that you see on the boxes and stuff like that, that's not necessarily the case when stored properly, because this fragrance is a prime example. There's nothing spoiled about the top note. There's no sour citrus to it. It's still rich and beautiful just as the day I bought it. If anything, it's a little bit richer and deeper because it's had years to macerate at this point. But definitely one of the older bottles I own. It's Tommy Bahama St. Barts. So this is one that goes for a couple $100 now. It's a Coty fragrance. And some of you that have been into fragrances for a long time have probably heard of this. It's called Avatar. Yes, I have worn it a little bit. This stuff goes for a couple $100 for a 50 ml. This was a $15 or $20 fragrance when it was new in the early 2000s. This is, I mean, when I got this bottle, I had a bottle back when my dad was alive. Almost 19, it'll be 19 years this month since he's been gone. And I bought another bottle, I want to say like 2 years after he passed. He passed in May of 03. We're May of 2022 right now. So maybe a year or two later, I had bought this bottle because I remembered having it. It's a beautiful, it's synthetic, don't get me wrong, but pineapple woody type of fragrance. And it actually performs really well for being what's dubbed as a cologne spray, just an eau de cologne. This stuff is really good, believe it or not. That's why it's sought after by those that like these older style Coty distributed fragrances. I want to say it's been like 2 years since I looked online and came across it. And I want to say they were over $200. This little 50 ml that used to be like a $15, $20 Walgreens fragrance is kind of what you can look at with Avatar. So because, almost dropped it, because of the value and scarcity of it at this point, that's why I kind of just don't wear it. I just kind of have it. You never know, but it's kind of an interesting topic of discussion kind of fragrance when I'm talking about my fragrances with someone in the event somebody comes over and wants to take a look at, you know, the just massive amount of fragrances that's behind me. But this is one that actually fetches a pretty penny on eBay. Are people paying that? I don't know. What you're asking versus what they're actually going for are always two different things, but not one you really hear anybody talk about. Is Avatar. Another late 90s, early 2000s kind of vintage fragrance that's extremely nostalgic to me. This was the last fragrance my dad ever bought me for Christmas. So you see the theme here. For Christmas, I always liked to get fragrances for Christmas. I've always been into fragrances, guys. And for me, this is a rebuy. I have a few of these. This is Aspen Discovery. Some of you may have seen the handful of videos maybe where I've discussed this fragrance. I have 3 of these little 75 mLs. I've been through a 50 ml bottle. I've been through a 1 ounce bottle. My 1 ounce bottle that he bought me, the first bottle I had, took me years to finally finish the sprays on it. But this is very nostalgic. It's a barbershop style, lavender heavy, woody musk. It's basic notes. It's citruses, lavender, musk, and woody notes, if I remember correctly, is the 4 notes to the note breakdown. Very generic note breakdown. Nothing super unique and special here. It's just nostalgic for me personally. It's decent though. It's decent. It does not smell anything like Aspen, which it is flankered from the famed, long-running, been around forever Aspen that kind of smells like cool water, somewhere in between cool water and green Irish tweed kind of thing. But this stuff is just straight up lavender aromatic aftershave smell. It really is. That old school smell. It's an old school barbershop scent profile. I really love it. I always have. These little 3/4 ounce bottles were going for $10 a piece from FragranceNet a few years ago. So I bought 3 of them just to rebuy it. They discontinued this fragrance back in like 03, 04, 05, somewhere around there. It wasn't on the market for a long time, but as goes with these Walgreens, CVS type of fragrances, like I like to dub them because that's where you could find them, they were flooded. They were at all the places. So they're still relatively easy to find for a decent price. They're all over eBay, places like that these days, and they don't spoil easily. It's dominated by lavender and musk, and the lavender and musk apparently doesn't spoil that easy, no matter what the quality of the fragrance oils is. So one that I have for nostalgic purposes, I seldom ever spray, but is Aspen Discovery. And this bottle's old. Speaking of Aspen Discovery, might as well talk about Aspen. This bottle of Aspen, my aunt got me this as a stocking stuffer for Christmas. Again, here we go, back to the fragrances for Christmas. Just wanted to focus all the way. So this bottle, I think it's a 75 ml, 50 ml. This bottle is every bit of, I want to say, like 15 years old. I got this before I met my wife. And it's still, again, it's a cheap fragrance. It's like a $10 fragrance, you know? And another one of those Walgreens fragrances that still smells so good. Piney green, fresh, woody. A little barbershop feel, but much more green, foresty, pine green type of smell. It's still super cheap. You can get 4 ounce bottles for like $10 online. You know, it's one of those classic cheap fragrances that's been around for decades. But this particular bottle is like a decade and a half old. Cheap synthetic fragrance that is not spoiled in the least bit. Still smells great, just like the first day I opened it. Because honestly, funny story about it was when she was asking me what I wanted for Christmas, I said I haven't had a bottle in years. I was asking for this. I didn't know this was discontinued at the time. I mean, this was 15 years ago. That's 07, you know. I had no idea this was discontinued at the time, and she got this. She saw Aspen and thought it was the same thing. So that was the first time I got Aspen. Not what I was looking for, but I still enjoy it nonetheless. I mean, not quite halfway through, but it's one that I used to wear on occasion. I like to wear it. This was one of those out the shower fragrances for me for a long time, which the next one we're about to talk about. These were my 2 in rotation out the shower fragrances years ago. But I mean, this is an all-time classic. You can't go wrong here. If you're on a budget, Aspen's a great fragrance. So about 15 years old is this bottle of Aspen. So speaking of, like I've told you guys many times, I typically like weaker performing fresh fragrances out the shower. So around that same time frame of me wearing Aspen out the shower, I was wearing the deodorant spray of Cool Water back and forth. That's where this little dent comes from. It'd just be 2 sprays just to freshen up. It's a lighter take on Cool Water. It's a deodorant spray, mild deodorant is what it says on the bottom. To this day, they still pop up at Ross and Marshall's and places like that all the time. Still smells great. This is every bit of 15, 16 years old, 14 years old, something like that. Not what a lot of people were probably expecting to see in this video, some of these fragrances. But these are the oldest bottles I have. And for the most part, they're not spoiled. There's a few of them that have a spoiled top note, but even this, super aquatic, fresh, minty. It smells like cool water, just a weaker performing cool water, which is what I liked it for. I typically just a light freshen up when I'm out the shower because I shower in the evenings. It's kind of a winding down before bed kind of thing. 2, maybe 3 sprays. Obviously, that's kind of evolved in recent years to where I wear much stronger fragrances because I just have so many fragrances to wear and to choose from these days. But back when I had 10 to 20 bottles, even back then, this was what I would reach for. And 2 sprays makes a bottle like this go a long way. But this is, like I said, every bit of anywhere from 14 to 16 years old is how old this mild deodorant spray of Davidoff Cool Water actually is. And then last but not least, this is technically 13 years old. This was a lesser known failed attempt at the relaunching of Zaharoff Pour Homme, the original. This is back when Givaudan was doing the fragrance, back when they were pushing synthetics pretty heavily on George, saying this is the way of the modern designer fragrances. This is where everybody's going towards. And it does smell like Signature Pour Homme, just a super synthetic version. George himself has told me, I hate it. It gives me a massive headache. He shelved it. A few people have a bottle of this and have gotten to experience it, but this is the first failed attempt because he did not like what was being presented to him, so he shelved it for several more years. And I'm glad he did, because Signature Pour Homme that came out in 2018, that's light years better than this fragrance, but it's from '09. It doesn't smell bad. It's got that beautiful lavender up top, but it's a much more synthetic smell. That's the thing. If you know anything about Zaharoff fragrances, synthetic, lower quality smell is not an option when it comes to Zaharoff fragrances. So I completely understand why it got shelved and why George chose not to go this route. Obviously, the bottle doesn't even look like something he would do. These were kind of a test run. He had a certain amount of them, of testers. My box even says tester written on it in Sharpie. But not one I wear. It's nice to have for the history. And it tells a very specific story, but it is one of the older bottles in my collection. Like I said, it's about 13 years old at this point. This is circa 2009. And I'm glad it never made the market because it would have changed the brand perception. Because like I said, this is very, very synthetic, especially if you compare it to Signature Pour Homme that came out 9 years later after this when it was done right. So like I said, just kind of have it. I don't wear it. But circa 2009, the failed relaunching, well, it wasn't even a relaunching, but the failed attempt to recreate the original Zaharoff Pour Homme. Well, that's the 15 oldest bottles in my collection. And until next time, do me a real quick favor, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. So I do appreciate all the feedback, and I love hearing from you guys. I don't really seek out vintage fragrances for the most part. I really don't. There's some stuff out there that fetch pretty penny that, yeah, are worth going back to older formulas of this, that, and the other. But kind of the only one I've actually sought out to get my hands on were these two at one point, was the vintage Nautica and old Aspen Discovery, and it's for nostalgic purposes and sentimental value and stuff like that for me. But some of these I've had longer than I've been married. And like I said before, it will be 12 years this November at the recording of this that I've been married, just to give you an idea. Some of these bottles are much older than my actual relationship that's over a decade old. So not necessarily everything is going to spoil. Even lower quality, cheaper fragrances, not necessarily everything spoils rather quickly. That's the moral of this story. Some of them, yes, the top note has spoiled a little bit, but depending on the quality, because back in 1994, this Tiffany For Men was super high quality, and it still smells as such today, 1994. Not spoiled in the least bit. And until next time, I will say, if you end up getting your hands on any of these fragrances in some form or fashion, and you give them a spray now, I can't guarantee you'll thank me later, but you never know. You might end up thanking me later. Have a good one, guys.